into retailers in our Arctics, semis as you call it over here, and then basically give them an invoice and hope that they're paid. But then suddenly they started asking for product data, then enriched product data, then they wanted images, then they wanted 3D spin rounds, etc. And then some of our customers, instead of being retailers, turned themselves into marketplaces. So suddenly we were having to grapple with the idea of actually listing products, etc., etc. So we needed a platform that could manage all our product data, both structured and unstructured. So by that I mean, all the video, all the images. We had installation instructions, we had care instructions. We had quite a lot of stuff that we had to get right. And we couldn't really find a platform that did what we wanted. And in the family, I was the one that had IT business, so it was sort of put on me, well, Martin, you're in IT, sort it out, sort of thing. So we looked and we decided that we'd try and build a platform that would work for a manufacturer / distributor. Couldn't really find anything that would do everything that we wanted to do at the time, especially when it was starting from sort of CAD drawings right through to sort of finished sort of e-com enriched data. So and during that journey, we got some of our suppliers were interested in it, and it quickly sort of snowballed into becoming a sort of standalone product. And in 2017, we launched it as a standalone PIM-DAM solution in the UK, and did quite well over there. And probably during COVID was sat thinking about, well, where else can I take Pimberly? Given that we were regularly competing against US software platforms, basically decided that we'd come over and see if we could launch in the US and see if we could actually start selling Pimberly to US businesses. And so I've been over here based in New York for the last sort of 3 years, sort of pushing out Pimberly, and some of my team are here today. But fundamentally we're headquartered in Manchester, UK. I'm Man United for those that are interested in soccer. Most of my team are Man City, but there you are. And yeah, so that's the backstory. So I understand a lot more about B2B than probably most people do. So in essence, I know a lot of companies will probably be, especially on their early journeys of e-com, genuinely probably don't need a PIM, because they're literally just sort of getting some of the products online and starting to actually get that e-com journey going for themselves. Might not even be transactional. It's just really there as informational so that people can see that you've got products, and that especially the younger generation, if there's anything like my kids, last thing they'll do is pick up a phone and actually talk to somebody. It's all sort of done on the mobiles. If they can't see it on the mobiles, you don't have it. When in actual fact, we know that if you ring our technical sales up, their answer is always yes, and then even if we don't have it, they'll go and try and find it. So that's part of the starting journey, as it were. And what I'll do is I'll try and explain as we go through some of the reasons at some point that it'll start getting difficult managing product data, and that's probably when you start looking at a PIM. So first of all, some of the customers that we deal with, some are very big, some aren't so big, but they all have the same problem. They've all ultimately get to the point where they've got so much product data coming in that they've got to manage, whether that's because they've got hundreds, or some of our customers even thousands of suppliers, all with their product data feeds. And when I say suppliers, that could be, if you're a disty and you're selling finished goods, or it might be if you're a manufacturer like I am, and you've actually got all your raw materials and components, etc. Increasingly, you're being asked to actually surface all the component information to your end supply chain. So it's just as important whether you're selling finished goods or whether you're actually a manufacturer. So on here you'll see, got West Coast IT Hardware. They're quite a big company, but they're probably only hundreds of thousands of SKUs. but they actually have around about 5,000 attributes, in terms of total number of attributes, because a lot of products there with lots of different attribution. Chef's Warehouse, some of you might know. Yes, electrical, a lot of you will deal in electrical goods. And Evo is office supplies, where the SKU count is not massive, but the actual number of categories that they actually sell over, everything from coffee beans, coffee machines, to paper, to pens, pretty much everything that you consume in an office. So again, it's all about managing all that product information and all the rich content that goes with it as well. So the main problems that our customers face is that, especially as they're growing, and especially if if they've ever been in an acquisitive environment, they potentially might have multiple sources of product data. So it's not untypical to actually go in and somebody will have multiple different ERPs, or they'll have a myriad of different places where all the product data comes from systems to spreadsheets to data feeds coming in. The next thing is that to actually get a good data set, product data set, so that you can actually put that on your e-com website and be able to allow customers to find your products, normally takes a lot of manual intervention, even before you get it into a format that's capable of being ingested by your e-com platform. There's quite a lot of work that goes on. And then obviously if you lay over the top of that, well, I want decent images, I want all the PDF spec sheets, installation manuals, and maybe increasingly, especially if you're dealing in construction materials, they're wanting the CAD files and they want BIM files, etc., etc. It just gets more and more, and you tend to find that there's a lot of manual intervention going on just to get to a base sort of level of competency, as it were. And then the other thing is, especially if you're dealing with a lot of products, it's sort of like, well, what is the quality like of my product data? Where are my gaps in product data? And which of those are actually hurting me when it comes to being able to sell? So ultimately, and this is sort of like what, everybody understands, sort of what your customers are wanting is basically really high, rich content, product data. They want it really accurate. They want to know that you've got the product that they want, and they feel confident that is the product, especially if you're looking at parts. They want to, it could be a part that's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years old. It could be EOL, but they want the confidence that they know that you know what that part is, and when you're presenting to them the next nearest replacement for that, they feel confident that that is going to work for them and they're not going to be returning it. And worst case for them is that actually, especially if you've got a piece of plant down, that plant's down for even longer than what it needs to be. So the other thing as well, especially with manufacturer, is launching products. So if you've actually got new products coming online, again, it might not just be the finished product, but it's also any of the components that are consumables or that are spares. You want to be able to launch that product immediately, and also have all the related products and spares that might already exist, might already be on your sort of platform already, but it's getting all those related products and relationships pulled together so that it's ready and available as soon as you sell a new product. And then at the end of the day, increasingly, again, hark back to the sort of the younger people out there, they're doing it on multimodal, so they're expecting to get the same information, same experience, whether they're actually on the mobile, whether they're on the web, or whether they're actually in your offices or stores or whatever, and actually looking up a product as well. So in terms of how does a PIM sort of solve these challenges, and this starts helping differentiate between when do I outgrow what an ERP can do / and/or what an e-com platform can do. So fundamentally, a PIM is there. It's a bit. I always say it's like thinking about a CRM is for customers, a PIM is for products. It's there solely to be the central source of truth for everything to do with a product, and it sort of all revolves around a product and a SKU, and it's looking to make sure that every single piece of information that it's needed for that SKU is available, it's high quality, whether that be an image, whether that be a diagram, whether that be a product description, but also it acknowledges that you might need different variations. So if I'm selling, and I always use the example of a high-vis jacket, if I'm selling a high-vis jacket or vest to schools, I want an image that's relating to schools, I want the text relating to schools with feature and bullet points. That same SKU I'm also potentially selling into construction. You know, I don't want, we have lollipop ladies in the UK, they're the people that hold the traffic whilst the kids go across the road. So, you know, when you're selling to construction, you don't want that image, but you want an image of a construction worker on a construction site. With that, you want a description that matches that, and also you want the features and bullet points around that. So suddenly, you know, you're starting to have multiple different variations of the same product content to be able to sell into different demographics, different sectors, etc. And that's when you start really outgrowing what an ERP or an e-com platform is meant to do. You know, they're meant there to be transactional, whereas a PIM is there to actually be that, as I say, that central source of truth, but also it's predominantly more unstructured data rather than structured data. And for those that are more technically minded, you typically find a PIM is based on a NoSQL database like MongoDB, like ours, rather than an SQL database, as it were, because it's all about I don't know what information I need to store. I don't know the files that might exist tomorrow that I need to store. So what I need to be able to do is just store anything against that product. The other thing as well is around validation. It's around governance. So a PIM is there to say, well, okay, well, I know what I need to be amazing. I can tell you where the gaps are. But the other thing is I need to understand who's changing what at what point. And actually, especially if it's regulatory things, you want the audit trail to say, at that point in time, what was the product description that was online? What was the technical spec sheet that was served up to that e-com platform? And who changed what when? And especially if you're in food and drinks industry, or if you're in pharmaceuticals, you know, it's quite heavily regulated, and being able to give an audit trail and show that you know who changed what and you know what information was available to who at what time is very, very important. And again, that's what a good PIM will do, but that goes beyond usually what an ERP will do, and certainly what an e-com platform will do. So again, sort of trying to pull together more and more of this use cases for you. And then the other area is in usually product data is created from multiple different departments in your business. So you'll usually, if you're a manufacturer and you're creating digital assets, that's usually with whatever you want to call it, your photography or digital or studio, who will be totally different from the people that are tasked with pulling in the actual if you like, static data like dimensions, weights, etc., who will be usually totally different to the people that are tasked with writing what we would call romance copy. You know, so your product, to be able to automatically spot that, automatically regenerate that spec sheet, and usually within about 20 seconds, you'll have the latest version of that spec sheet, the old version archived, and also coming back to the point, if somebody ever says, well, on that day, I looked and the spec's different now. You'll be able to say, yeah, we know exactly why it's different, and that's what was served up at that time. The other thing, obviously, especially in terms of related products, you can usually, again, with most modern PIMs, put some fairly complex rationale and algorithm in there to say what are the replacement products I should have, what are my upsells, what are my alternate products as well. You know, so again, if you take really boring things, go think about my company. You know, if you take screws and certain requirements you need around a screw. If we run out of a certain screw, there's certain other screws that cost more that we wouldn't normally use, but we could use them as an alternative. Again, those are sort of things in a decent PIM, you can put that in so that you can never not do a sale, but be confident that the product that you're recommending to a customer is going to be suitable for what they need to do. And the other thing as well is that having rich, proper rich product data, again, when we talk about returns, it is fairly standard, that a lot of times if you don't have all the data that they need, there's a little bit of sort of like hope in terms of that is the product or the component that they need, and that when they get to them, and they'll open it up and it won't be what they wanted, so it won't fit, it'll be the wrong size, etc. And again, having decent rich product data will minimize that. But also, again, on a PIM, you'll never have perfect data. You'll always have gaps, but it's understanding where those gaps are. And also, again, if you set your PIM up properly, it should be able to give you priorities, whether that's in terms of the best sellers or the highest gross margin or whatever, in terms of where do I concentrate my time to actually enrich the product data that I've got, or it might be I've got a high return rate on this, if I do some sort of analysis as to the reason for it, oftentimes it will be, well, I just didn't have the right data. And again, it's sort of like it's helping you understand where to put that effort in. And again, come back to sort of ERPs and e-coms, they're not set up, to think like that. It comes back to the view that a PIM is there for the product. Ultimately, it's there to make sure that you have the best possible, within reason from a commercial point of view, the best possible content to maximize sales, minimize returns. And ultimately, as we know, if you've got everything that a customer wants, and they feel that they're getting everything right first time, or as often as you possibly can do, then that creates that customer loyalty. So in terms of Pimberly, we're what we call a full service. My previous background has always been, in IT managed services, etc. So I built Pimberly up as a product that we sort of throughout the whole process with you and with our customers. I've got a zero churn policy. We work very heavily to make sure that the product is exactly what the customer wants. All the development on the product is driven by our customers. We also are heavily involved in the implementation. So whether that's with working alongside a systems integrator, or whether that's there's no systems integrator because you do everything internally, that's fine with Pimberly. And also we're there again for a full support. So you'll get dedicated technical account manager. So his or her role is purely to talk to end users to understand how are they using the platform. What are the issues that they've got with the platform? Sometimes, and also from my point of view, I want the little niggly bits, because normally, if you sat in your little ivory tower, all you'll get is the big sort of bits, and you don't get the feedback from the end users in terms of the little bits that maybe are a little bit annoying for them. And I like to get those into our product so we can get rid of those and make sure that customers and the users get the maximum out of Pimberly. And then on top of that, from a support point of view, we've got a technical support desk. It's you can call, you can email, you can do, we're there all the time, and essentially, from our point of view, very proud to say that we've never lost an enterprise B2B customer, and that's sort of like our ethos, which is we're there for the journey and there for the long haul, as it were, together. So everybody talks about AI. Everything's got AI in it now, isn't it? It used to be I/O, didn't it? We'd all have .io. So I'll just quickly talk about what we do in Pimberly. So we started probably, I don't know now, 3 years ago, sort of looking at AI and embedding, started with things like product descriptions, where, you put in, this is the product, this is the tone of voice, this is the length, these are the SEO keywords I want injecting in there. and it come up with a product description and comes up with 2 or 3 examples, and then customers would choose an example, maybe edit it, and that would be their thing. So it really was based around what a copywriter did and accelerating their workload. So that was sort of deployed sort of 2 years ago. We got quite a few customers using that, but it's since sort of evolved quite significantly, as everybody will know, that actually what we've now done is allowed, as well as that, we've also allowed any part of the workflow to be able to break out and actually go to any sort of AI engine and depending on that engine to do what it's good at. So some of our customers, for example, will be breaking out and saying, well, I want, I've got a CAD drawing, I want a digital, I want that as a 3D sort of synthetic image. Now there's a little bit of time, you have to wait for that to happen, but you can make that happen and then it come back and the synthetic image is done. Yes, we've got product descriptions, yes, we've got features and bullet points. Also, a lot of our customers are using it for ETL now. So instead, where they're actually doing a lot of their, what used to be like the complex product or text sort of like splitting and concatenation and things like that, where they used to use spreadsheets, etc. You could do that and still can do that in Pimberly using formulas and regex and things like that. But increasingly, people are actually using a prompt and saying, I've got this long string, I need to get the dimension, I need to get the width out of that, I want the width of that, I want it in metric or imperial or US imperial, British imperial, I want it to this decimal places, and I want you to put it in that attribute. And then, so long as you're very specific, it's pretty damn good at doing that sort of stuff. And then, increasingly now people are looking at image generation as well. So simple things like, I want to put a watermark on an image, or I want to put a sales sticker on the top right-hand corner of an image. You don't need sort of your web designers or whatever to do that anymore. As long as you're very, very specific, you could just get the AI engine, whichever one you choose, to actually do that. And then the other thing that we're finding as well now is categorization. So instead of you deciding where you want that product to go in your category tree, you're actually sort of asking, you're exposing your category tree to the LLM and saying, right, okay, where would you put, this is where we put these products before, where would you put them? And auto allocate the products to the categories as well. So, and then finally, there's a big discussion about public and non-public LLMs. So we have customers that actually use both for different reasons. So non-public, i.e. your own corporate one, where you keep your own information that sort of, we hope, sort of internal to yourselves. But then occasionally, especially when it comes to copy, you would want to go outside and ask the public LLM. So because, for example, we got customers that say, well, actually, I had one the other day and it's selling gutters. And depending on where you are in the US, I didn't know that, what you call a gutter is completely different. I think, I can't remember what it is, it's Eve something or other that they call it in sort of like Canada and whatever. So again, the public LLM is pretty good for that. If you're saying, well, I actually want a product description that's specific to this demographic for this product, then that's definitely a public LLM because you probably don't have that knowledge internally. So there is a mixed use case there as well. So I think I babbled on quite a lot now, haven't I? So I don't even know what my time is. What's my time like? Yeah. So any questions?
You spent a little time on DAM and how it...
Yep. Yeah, so because I started off needing to do both structured and unstructured data, I started on MongoDB. So we actually have a completely, it's hard to say integrated because it's the same platform, but what you can do is so you can treat an image or a digital asset just like you can a product. So it can have its own workflows, it can have its own attribution completely separate to a product. So you can have, so if you use an enterprise DAM, then you can have all that functionality in Pimberly. But the moment that you say, right, no, this is now ready to be used by the PIM, if you like, it's literally, got a flag on it that then says, if I'm a PIM user, I can now see that asset, and then use that asset. But obviously, up until that point, it's only visible to the DAM users. Of course, that could be the same person. But as well in the DAM, you've got all the things that you would expect, in terms of image transformation. Usually we'd only keep one image in Pimberly, which would be your high-res image or your raw image. And then as we push it out to the different channels, we'd transform that to the optimized size, fit, background or no background, alt text, ADA compliance text, watermark or no watermark. So all the things you'd expect. Okay. Sorry, yeah.
You alluded to marketplaces a couple of times.
Yep.
But is there any kind of pre-built, say, syndication capabilities within Pimberly?
Yeah, so what we have is, so I'm going to say yes and a no here, and I'll tell you the reasons why. What we have is that we've got unlimited channels out, and a lot of our customers will have and each channel can be validated for the endpoint, so therefore you can have an Amazon, an eBay, or whatever validated channel out, so that you know that and in exactly the format that you need it to be in. But I determine true syndication of where you then have got an API connection to that marketplace, and you're able to, one is to list it on that marketplace, but also to be able to be aware of when that marketplace changes its rules, because it's the breaking changes that they do. Now, I don't do that. I've obviously got loads of partners that I will pass that to, whether it's Feedonomics, Channel B, Syndicate, whatever. I do loads of those. And the reason for that is it's a whole different sort of ball game, is sitting on top of 50, 100, 200, 300 marketplaces, listening all the time to what change. You wake up that morning and what change they've made. So for me, I've decided, no, that's my cut-off point. I can deliver those validated channels if you want them, but at the moment I'm not. I'll also integrate with the syndication partners that do it, but that's not what I do at the moment. Thank you. All right.
Any more questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian.
Cheers.
Good job.
Thanks.